Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and I'm back with a series that we haven't done in a little while, mostly due to the holidays having been fairly busy and insane, having people visiting and leaving, and me leaving and visiting, and all sorts of crazy stuff. But we are back to the Greenskin Q&A. I want to say, let me double check this so I can give you a factual statement. We have about 13 pages worth of questions left to go. Which sounds like a lot, but the good news is once we get into past this set of them, it's pretty much down to just two categories, which are Greenskins' relationships to other races and Greenskins, fantasy Greenskins versus 40k Greenskins, and what's the difference. And a lot of those questions kind of start to overlap a bit, so those will be fairly easy to knock out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into today's questions. First up, we've got Jordan Brandon81, who asks, what would be the most advanced thing any Greenskin has ever built, and who built it? Have there ever been any major Greenskin attacks on the Dark Elves in Naggarond or in Norsca, other than Gork and Mork and the Spider God, or are there any other Greenskin gods, no matter how minor? So the most advanced thing that Greenskins have ever managed to build are war machines. And the most advanced war machine are actually called pump wagons, or snotling pump wagons. And the reason they're called that is because snotlings know how to build them. Now, the thing about snotlings, if you've watched the prior videos of these, is that they are incredibly stupid creatures that are really, really small and are generally just a nuisance. But weirdly enough, when they gather in large enough numbers, especially if there's a war going on, so there's like a bunch of that Greenskin energy and the winds of magic are blowing hard through the horde, the way it manifests with snotlings as opposed to magic or just, you know, high adrenaline with orcs and goblins is that the snotlings gather up and they start gathering bunches of pieces of junk together, and they create these mechanical marvels. And these wagons are literally these, we're talking about big chariot-sized wagons that are crewed by a bunch of snotlings who just kind of make it work. It's almost magic. And it seems that somewhere in snotling DNA, they have it imprinted on them how to create and manage a snotling pump wagon to use it in battle. And they can actually be devastating weapons, especially because they're very customizable, and snotlings tend to add very bizarre additions to them, or should we say, what's a good word? They kind of add little attachments. Like they'll add wings so that the pump wagons, when they build up enough speed, are able to like bounce off the ground, so they can hop over terrain or obstacles to just slam into people. Or snotlings, I believe it's their dung. It's called snotling spores. But snotlings, when they defecate, their release is basically a grenade. It's a very toxic substance, and it can explode. It's very volatile. So snotlings will literally put a bunch of these spore mines on the front of their wagons, so that when it reaches close combat and it slams into something, all the spores explode in a big detonation that does a ton of damage. It's a devastating weapon if utilized correctly. But oddly enough, the stupidest Greenskins in existence are also the most tech savvy in one way. So, it fits. As for your following questions, the Greenskins have launched major assaults on every continent on the planet, with the exception of the South Realm of Chaos. And honestly, there were probably Greenskins on the South Pole, or Antarctica for us, until the Realm of Chaos came into existence, or before the polar gates blew up at both poles, and the southern pole just kind of got incinerated and just turned into a horrible wasteland. But beyond that, there are Greenskins literally everywhere, except Ulthuan. So, but even Ulthuan has been invaded by Greenskins with Grom the Paunch. So, I've just said so a bunch of times. But that should hopefully answer that question. And then, outside of Gork, Mork, and the Spider God, no, those are the only gods. There are other things that the Greenskins view as being like a manifestation of Gork and Mork, like, or something that needs to be respected, like the twin moons for some Greenskins can be seen as manifestations of Gork and Mork. For instance, for many Night Goblins, the Bad Moon, which is Morslib, the Chaos Moon, some of them see that as a manifestation of their gods or a various aspect of them. A lot of Greenskins worship the Angry Sun, or the Red Sun, which is what the emblem for the classic Greenskins tribe or Black Crag is in Total War Warhammer. So hopefully that answers that. Next up is Jeremy Collier, who asks, Sotek, are there any Greenskins that are good, like as in they don't want to fight people? I think we've already answered this, but just a refresher, no, there's no such thing as good Greenskins. Greenskins are all incredibly violent. Like, among beastmen, there are non-violent beastmen, which are called does, which are the female beastmen. Traditionally, they are docile. So beastmen have like some non-scary members of their society. Greenskins, nothing. They're just pure violence is their existence. Next up is Ogre Campos, who asks, has there ever been an occasion of an orc having a sense of honor and camaraderie for an orc with non-greenskins because of respect for another fighter? Any non-green amigos for the orcs? So, Grimgor is a black orc. And I'm saying this as an example. So, black orcs have a much... Black orcs, you could say, have a sense of honor. They have a sense of martial pride, in that black orcs especially are not interested in a fight unless it's going to be worth their time. Unless it's just they've been so long without a fight that they'll just take anything at that point. So like Grimgor, Ironhide for instance, Grimgor has been known to almost spare, actually just outright spare certain settlements or survivors because he doesn't care to chase down people when they're beaten. Once somebody's beaten, they don't matter to him anymore. Like, they're boring. He's already proven he's tougher and dead hard. You know, he's the artist. He's the greatest. And once he's proven that, he's off to go fight somewhere else. So black orcs are really the only orcs that have a sense of honor per se, but it's very twisted. They will do things like if you encounter a black orc, they would be much more likely, if they acknowledge you to be a threat, they would be much more likely to back off, and the biggest, baddest black orc would come forward and smash everybody out of the way and be like, this one's mine. Like, this guy is my fight alone. Nobody else gets to fight him. Go around. And they would wait for you to be ready. You know, they would wait for you to get on your mount or get off your mount, equip your favorite weapons, put on your armor if you were wounded, like tend to a wound, and then they would fight you. But once they start fighting you, it's all in, all bets are off, and they fight dirty. Black orcs do not have any rules that they follow once they've started fighting. But there have been many, many, many times where black orcs especially, and some orc warlords, though for orcs it depends on the warlord in question, but for black orcs it's a huge part of their culture for if there's like a challenge or a really good fight, they call dibs. And if you get in their way, even if you're a fellow Greenskin, they will kill you to protect whoever it is they're gonna fight, so that they get to fight them. For instance, when Gorfang's actually not a black orc, but he's a good example of this. When Gorfang Rotgut fought Belagar and High King Thorgrim Grudgebearer during the the second to last siege of Carrick 8 Peaks, Gorfang literally started tearing apart his own guys if they tried to get anywhere near Thorgrim or Belagar, because they were his fight alone. He wasn't having any of that. Grimgor has done very similar things. Grimgor will happily curb stomp his own troops just to get to something he considers worth a challenge. And if you try and kill steal from them, they will be pissed and you're gonna die. Like, there's no question you're gonna die. So, as far as your question goes, I would say that orcs, you have a reasonable chance of something along the lines of honor, in that they will accept challenges, they will fight, and once they've beaten you, they don't really care to chase you down. There's even I don't remember his name, but there was a particularly famous war boss. It might have been Gorbad Ironclaw. I don't think it was, but it was someone that was invading the Empire, and he defeated all of the defenders in a bloody siege. And like the city threw everything they had at the Orcs to try and get them from not getting into the walls where all the women and children were. And the Greenskins killed everybody, but then when they finally smashed open the gates, there was basically nobody left in the garrison. Like, there was a ton of women and children and elderly, but there weren't any warriors left. And he kind of looked around and he was like, these guys are beaten. Let's go attack this other place over the... You know, there was like another castle not near a few days away, and he was like, screw these guys, let's go. And they just left. Like, they just left them there to rebuild. So they'll do that. Now, goblins, no chance. You're screwed if you lose to goblins. Goblins are like, you should kill yourself before you let yourself get caught by a goblin. Orcs, most of the time, worst thing they're going to do is kill you and eat you. But goblins, no. But yeah, hopefully that answers that. Any non-green amigos? We'll go over that more heavily in the relations videos, but not really. Greenskins are pretty racist. Next up, we got Zhou Fang, who asks, any notably good or at least friendly greenskins? We went over that. Greenskins are not pure evil, per se, but all they care about is fighting. No greenskin has ever or will ever be good. All they care about is a good fight. Now, if that happens to help the good guys, great, but they don't really care. Ulon Player asks 2 more questions. Do races like Dark Elves, Skaven, and Ogres enslave Orcs and Goblins as well as their typical allies like Trolls and Giants? I'm aware that Ogres practice rampant slavery of Gnoblars and Giants, and in the subject of Skaven and Ogres who like to eat people, do they also eat Greenskins? Is there any noted difference between their flesh and that of other races as their fungus people? So, to the first part, everyone who bothers to acquire slaves will always end up having ridiculous amounts of greenskin slaves. The only type of greenskin you will usually not see enslaved are black orcs, and that's because black orcs make really bad slaves. If you know what's good for you, you will not take a black orc slave. Just because they're very clever, and they tend to know how to rile up all the other greenskins, and breaking their will is literally impossible. Like, they are designed on a genetic level to just wait for that perfect opportunity, and then you'll have a full greenskin right on your hands, and it will not be good. Other orcs and goblins are very easy to beat down as slaves. As for Gnoblars aren't actually slaves of the ogres. They're more of it's more of a tolerable nuisance that the ogres put up with, since the Gnoblars are so good at performing menial tasks in exchange for being protected and not eaten, which mainly has to do with the fact that the ogres do not consider the Gnoblars to be good eating because they're very like bony. That being said, ogres will eat them if they get, bored or just notably hungry, but traditionally the two races have a very symbiotic relationship in that the ogres protect the Gnoblars, but in exchange the Gnoblars do everything the ogres don't want to do themselves. Like carry Grease's gold tooth around. As for the second part of the question, any race that's willing to eat humans will eat greenskins, with almost no exceptions. Or pretty much anything that moves, really. Like, if you're eating people, you're basically already over the line of you're going to eat whatever moves. The only notes that we have about, like, the difference in flavor between greenskin flesh and human and like other things is actually there is a very notable note by Goldfag Maneater, if I recall correctly, that goes a bit something along the lines of it goes a bit into what eating greenskins tastes like. And the notable thing that the ogres mention is that pretty much all greenskins are very gamey, and most goblins are way too stringy to really be worth the effort of capturing and cooking and eating them. However, night goblins are noted to be an exception. They're considered quite the delicacy, as their crazy mushroom diet gives them very exotic seasoning and flavoring. So ogres are actually pretty fond of eating night goblins. Most orcs, ogres, and all those guys Apparently orcs are, I mean, they're gamey, but they don't taste bad, and they have a lot of meat on them, and they give you a good fight. So, I mean, ogres and greenskins love each other as far as like fighting one another is concerned. They give each other great fights, and they can get anything they want from the other race, which is why the Mountains of Morn are a notable cesspit of just endless fighting between greenskin tribes and ogre tribes. But hopefully that answers those questions. Next up is Oplitz GR, who says, I have 2 questions. Number 1, why do goblins have a natural fear of elves and not of humans and dwarves? And 2, how can greenskins control trolls and make them do stuff? As far as I know, trolls are super stupid. Okay, so the first thing, goblins are mainly afraid of elves due to their crazy supernatural abilities and skills in battle. For centuries, or actually millennia at this point, greenskins, especially goblins, are creatures that rely very heavily on numbers, speed, and stealth. Actually, goblins explicitly. Like, that's their only 3 things goblins have going for them. Beyond, like, being able to get certain monsters to work for them, right? But when your main strategy is numbers, speed, and stealth, elves are probably the worst nightmare you could go up against. Because elves will crush you at 2 of those 3 categories. That's the main thing, is that every time the goblins have fought elves in their history, they get brutally slaughtered. I mean, just massacred. And the elves just one-up them at everything the goblins try and do to gain an advantage. You know, they try and use stealth warfare, the elves can easily detect them and are much better at it. They try and use speed to their advantage with, you know, wolf riders and spiders and all of their, you know, squigs and all this stuff. Elven steeds and white lions and all that stuff just are way above. You know, the goblins trying to rely on Ragnarok spiders or trolls and stuff like that, or giants. The elves show up with dragons. Like, just the elves kind of just one-up them at every opportunity. And the goblins don't like that. You have to remember, goblins hate a fair fight. They are much, much happier when they have an edge of some sort. And you also can't lure elves, you know, into the deep, dark places of the world like you can with dwarves. So there's just no advantages for goblins against elves. So over the millennia, they've just kind of gotten this ingrained terror of the elves. However, if you were to ask a goblin why they're terrified of elves, they will always respond with something along the lines of that the elves smell funny. Like, there's an odor to the elves that just deeply unsettles goblins. You know, kind of like how if you're human, there are certain sights or smells that if we were to get hit by, it could cause a fear response in you just because of evolutionary stimuli. You know, your brain's just like, whoa, I know I'm not supposed to be near that. That's basically what the situation is with goblins and elves. The only exception being Grom the Paunch, which Grom the Paunch was actually, he was the elf slayer. He was the great hero of the goblins who was able to get them to overcome their fear, which was not good for Ulthuan. As for your second question, trolls are incredibly idiotic creatures. That is true. However, greenskins are very well equipped to order them around by just shouting at them and hitting them, and they know how to motivate the big brutes. Because the thing about trolls is, trolls are, although they are not greenskins, they are very similar to greenskins in that they're very fond of violence and have figured out over many centuries or millennia or whatever that because of intermixing, that joining up with orcs and goblins tends to result in a very reliable source of food and protection. So kind of like how humans and dogs have developed a symbiotic relationship over thousands of years, so have greenskins and trolls, in that the two of them kind of know they can work well together. Plus, the main thing that makes trolls easy to use for greenskins is that pretty much anybody could use trolls, but the problem is most races either don't have the patience for it, or they don't consider it worth the risk, because if the trolls just get stupid in the middle of the battle and they just kind of sit around and start looking at the ground or drooling or just chewing on their fingers, for most races that would screw up your battle strategy. You know, suddenly you have an unprotected flank, or they're blocking a cavalry charge or whatever. Greenskins don't give a crap about any of that. They're like, whatever, just go, 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 go. And they'll just run behind them and whip at them and stuff. And if the trolls decide to be idiots for a little bit, you know, I mean, the Greenskins have enough problems with trying to get their own guys to stop fighting each other long enough to get an ordered charge. You know, so they just are much more capable of dealing with trolls. And the two have worked together for so long that they've just developed really reliable strategies in that relationship. Next up, we've got Knight 4154, who asks, have the Greenskins ever allied with the side of Order, and if so, how long did it last? Yes, the Greenskins have allied with the forces of Order, but not on purpose. Basically, there have been many, many times where the bad guys, or the forces of destruction or chaos or death or whatever you want to say, we're smashing into an enemy, right? You have this huge chaos legion that's attacking a dwarf hold, for instance, and they're just going crazy on it. But because there's so much violence and so much just insanity going on, it drew the attention of like lots and lots of Greenskins. And so the Greenskins will all get together and go, wow, let's go join the fight. And they'll just run in there and just smash into everybody. And they just slam into the Chaos Army and end up causing, like, you know, they'll tear apart the back guard, or the rear guard and the siege equipment. And they'll just start ripping their way through the army. And the dwarves will just shut the doors and be like, shoot the war machines. We don't care who we hit, so just shoot. You know, that's happened a lot. There have been lots and lots and lots of Greenskins that have attacked Beastmen, Warriors of Chaos, Norskins, Skaven, Vampire Counts, Tomb Kings, Demons. Probably the most famous instance that comes to mind was a super long time ago. Like before the Empire was founded, or Sigmar was born. There was a crazy incident where basically this big storm of magic in the Southlands impacted basically a site of power where the lizardmen fought the demons way back at the dawn of time. And the storm of magic caused a chaos rift to physically tear open in real space. So demons start pouring through. And the lizardmen saw it coming, so the lizardmen sent this huge army to fight the demons. So you had these two big armies about to clash, and the lizardmen are sitting there trying to stop a third chaos portal from opening on the planet, which would have been horrible for the Southlands, if not everybody, because that would have allowed demons to just get a physical foothold on the planet outside of the polar gates. But fortunately, in a weird way, there was a huge Savage Orc tribe, and they just kind of were like, oh shit, because there were just these two huge armies coming onto their territory, and they didn't like the look of the lizardmen, but they really didn't like the look of the demons. So they were like, screw it, and they just kind of attacked everybody. So there ended up being a free-for-all between the Demons of Chaos, the Lizardmen, and the Savage Orcs. And the Orcs managed to win and killed everybody. Like, they just killed everybody. But they still had this big chaos rift that was just spewing out demons. So what they did is they used all the Lizardmen stuff to construct a giant idol of Gork right on top of the portal. And just through sheer stupid luck and their own belief and just all this other crazy crap and their shamans, they just kind of closed it. Like, because they used all this super powerful magical artifacts that the lizardmen had brought with them, and their shamans were just juiced up on Wa energy, they basically just created this massive idol of Gork, just parked right in the portal, and it shut it. So they do that kind of crap a lot. As for intentionally, the only time Greenskins have ever purposefully allied with the good guys was during the end times, when Grimgor Ironhide, as the incarnate of beasts and leading what was known as the Beastwa, which was the combined forces of all the Greenskins and all of the Ogre Kingdoms that were left, he purposefully joined up with Order after he fought with Malekith, and Malekith basically like surrendered and tried to. Malekith kind of surrendered and told him like Archaon was like the biggest bad there ever was, and so Grimgork, with the good guys defeated, in his mind he absorbed the good guys into his Wa. So you have this orc war boss whose lieutenants in his Wa, so his war bosses are Malekith, Sigmar, Nagash, Tyrion, Teclis, Alariel, you know, like, and Balthazar Gelt. Like, he's like, this is my crew. He just ran in there and then he kicked Archaon in the face. Anyway, Wolfskull 1506 asks, are there any orc or goblin pirates? And if there are, how do they make their own ships, or do they steal them? Do the Greenskins make their own alcohol? And are there any tribes that work with other races? So, first of all, yes, you bet your butt there are Greenskin Pirates. They are all over the place. And they do make their own ships, and sometimes they do steal them. But, generally, so Greenskin ships, generally the way they're made is that Greenskins will just take a bunch of wood and just kind of, like, they'll just take metal and wood and just keep wrapping shit together until it floats. And they'll make it as big as they can. If it's a fairly advanced ship, they might put rock lavas on it. Or if it's a really, really big ship, they'll be able to take like a bunch of wyverns. Or a particularly famous strategy that they did in a series called Man of War Corsair, which is actually a game you can play and it's super duper fun. They do this in the game. Is that Greenskin Pirates figured out a really nasty tactic where wyverns would grab a bunch of squigs in their claws and they would fly over enemy ships and drop the squigs on the ships. So either the squigs would die, where they would hit the deck and explode, which was kind of bad for whoever happened to be standing next to them, or they would hit the ship and survive, which would be way worse because then you have squigs on your ship. So they have a lot of really goofy tactics, but there have been Greenskin blockades, like full-on blockades that have been caused by Greenskins literally just taking big chains and chaining a ton of shipwrecks together into just a massive line, and they get it vaguely in place where it blocks somebody, and they're like, boom, you're blockaded now, you're under siege. I think it's in the Gotrek and Felix book. Ooh, yikes, which one is it? It might be Elf Slayer? But there is a Gotrek and Felix book, which literally the opening scene is a orc pirate blockade of Barak Var, the seaport of the Dwarven Realms, and Gotrek like single-handedly breaks it, because Gotrek. So there you go. But they're totally fine stealing ships. But yes, there are orc captains, and captain is spelled Kaptain. And they do like boss hats. You gotta have a boss hat if you're gonna be a pirate. As for alcohol, yes, Greenskins can make their own alcohol. Night Goblins are definitely the brewmasters of the Greenskin universe, but Greenskins have a very famous type of alcohol called fungus brew. I don't know what kind of mushrooms they use to make it. All I know is it gets you super drunk. Like it is like such a ridiculous. There's no flavor or nuance to it. Like there's no like brilliant design behind it, like with dwarf beers. It's just like pure design to get you wasted. And it tastes like absolute garbage. And then, are there any tribes that work with other races? So sometimes. The biggest example, Night Goblins will frequently ally with Skaven to team up against the dwarves or other enemies that are invading their underground realms, but it always ends in backstabbing, like within hours or days. Like those alliances are shaky at the best of times. But beyond that, there's lots of records of Greenskins that have allied with Dark Elves, because the Dark Elves will usually take like slave Greenskins they have, and they will basically train up an orc to be a puppet, and they'll send them out to basically manipulate certain tribes. That has worked canonically. Beyond that, though, not too much. Ogres and Greenskins ally sometimes, though they fight just as often. And sometimes Greenskins will team up with the Warriors of Chaos. But that's super rare. Usually it has to be like a big Chaos horde to attract the favorable attention of some Greenskins. But it has happened. And then the last question for today will be G. Kirkman, who asks, how do Greenskin treat women and children, speaking of humans? Do they see killing them as ignoble? So, depends on the Greenskin. Orcs generally... So, no Greenskins sees killing women and children as, like, a bad thing. They would just... Some don't find it worth the effort. For instance, Orcs don't really care. Unless the women and children are fighting back, or they just happen to be in a city that the Greenskins are looting or raising, they don't care. Like, they would kill them because violence is violence, and they'll take whatever they can get, but they wouldn't feel any particular way about it. We already discussed earlier that some, like black orcs especially, do not really find enjoyment in killing things that don't fight back well. Now, goblins, on the other hand, whew, you do not want to be around goblins. Especially women and children. Especially women and children. You do not want to get caught by goblins. They will do terrible things to you. They will torture you in ways unimaginable, and then some. And they will enjoy every second of it. You know, goblins have a noted history of... I'm trying to remember exactly what the wording is, but there has been a scene. If you ever read, probably best book to read about what goblins do to people is Skarsnik, in literally the first chapter, maybe the second chapter. But there's a narrator in the book who tells Skarsnik's life story, and the way he gets captured starts with him being in an inn, and a bunch of people get captured, and the goblins like torture the shit out of him because he's the only one they need, so he's the only one that survives. And if I remember right, I remember they capture a halfling who they make fight a snotling in like a ring, and then they kill him, or he gets killed by the snotling, one of the two. But if I remember right, they capture a woman and they do some like horrible shit to her with some knives. Like, it's like, if you watch The Witcher, like episode 3 of The Witcher, you kind of like that, but like way worse, because it's not part of some ritual to make you pretty or whatever, or stronger. It's just like, you're just fucked. So yeah, goblins. Never feel bad about killing goblins. they are the worst. But because they're kind of comical about it, they can kind of get away with it, because Games Workshop doesn't focus zero in too much on just like the pure nasty gritty stuff, which thankfully, you know, fantasy's already grimdark enough. Thank you very much. But yeah, so that will be where we will end today. We're doing good. So we're gonna get back on these, knocking these out daily. Thanks again for watching, guys, and thank you for your patience. For those of you who are wondering what race is next, it is not going to be announced yet, because I know who's next, but I don't want to say it until we're at the end of this series. So when you see a Greenskin Q&A episode finale, that's the one you're going to watch if you don't really care about the Greenskins and you just want to ask questions about the next one. So yeah, thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care, have a great day, and see you then.